Today we are going to be taking a look at the AFC North, going through every single position and ranking all four teams, seeing how they stack up against each other. Let's go ahead and dive right into it. At quarterback first, this is going to be the Bengals at number 1 with Joe Burrow at the helm. I think it just has to be Joe Burrow. He is the second best quarterback in the league in my opinion. I just think he is so talented. Obviously the surrounding core around him is very, very good, but his accuracy, his poise, his decision making, and he's really completely just kind of turned the franchise around. He deserves to be number 1. I think at number 2, it's going to be the Ravens. I think with the Ravens, Lamar Jackson just signed a new deal. He is a incredibly dynamic, incredibly talented player, and I definitely think that, as long as he can stay healthy, he deserves this spot as the second best quarterback in the division. Up next, this is kind of tough because we are very unsure of what Deshaun Watson will look like, but I think because of the pure talent he has to be number 3 in this division. When we really saw him last play a full season back in Houston. Now, granted, that was 3 years ago. He was a top 10 quarterback in the league, so he's a long time removed from that, and I don't think that he's going to necessarily get back to that point, but I do think he is a little bit more proven than Kenny Pickett, who will be in this 4th spot. I actually really think that Kenny Pickett can become a quality NFL starting quarterback. I like what he can do for the Steelers. Didn't necessarily put up the best stats as a rookie, but I thought he showed a lot of really good character. He won a lot of games for the Steelers, and I think overall he's on the right track to becoming a good, successful franchise quarterback. Overall, I thought the quarterbacks were relatively straightforward, but I do think that that's always kind of going to be the most contentious position as well. So let me know what you think about that. At the running back position, it's got to be the Browns here. Nick Chubb is probably a top 3 running back in the league. He can just do so many different things. I think he might be the best pure rusher in the league. Isn't necessarily as dynamic in the passing game, but man, he is so good between the tackles. He's got a great offensive line, and he really takes advantage of it. I think there's really no argument. He is clearly number 1. Next up, I think it could go in a variety of different ways. I am going to go with the Bengals up next. Joe Mixon did have a bit of a down season last year, but I thought overall he still was very productive. I think overall, they just don't run the ball a lot in Cincinnati. Mixon was used a lot as a check down option, and I think he's gotten a lot better at that. They did lose Samaje Perine to the Broncos in free agency. They replaced him with Chase Brown. I do think that they have some pieces there. Overall, it does come down to I like Mixon. I do think he is a quality player. Obviously, there has been some off the field things with Mixon this offseason. He has a big contract, but as of now, he is on the team. Fully expect him to be on the team for this season, and I do think that he pushes them into that number 2 spot. Up next is going to be the Steelers. I do think that Najee Harris is a bit of a high volume player, and that's why he is productive. Didn't have a great yards per carry, especially at the beginning of the season. Did get better as the offensive line started to gel, and it certainly didn't help that his offensive line was one of the worst units in the league as well. So I do think Warren is a very solid number 2 back. I thought he showed some really nice flashes at times last year. And so I do think the Steelers do have a really solid running back core, but I do think that they are going to be 3rd in this division, which leaves the Ravens to be 4th. J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards are talented players, but there's just so much uncertainty with a lot of them there. I do think that when they're healthy, they can be quality players. J.K. Dobbins in particular, I think is very, very talented. He just has not been able to stay on the field. All of that uncertainty, I do think, has to have them at last in this division. For wide receiver, Bengals are going to be number 1. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. They also bring in Charlie Jones, Andre Yosevich in the draft as well. I think they have the best wide receiver room in the league, so really no debate that they're number 1 here. I do think the next 3 really are all completely up in the air. I'm going to go with the Browns at number 2. I think Amari Cooper is the most proven wide receiver on these 3 teams. I really think that he is a very high floor player. He was very productive, had over 1,000 yards, almost double-digit touchdowns. You also got Elijah Moore from a trade from the Jets. I do think that he is a quality player, nothing super special, but I do like him there. They got Cedric Tillman in the draft, who I was a huge fan of. You have Donovan Peoples-Jones as well, so I like some of the pieces that they have on that roster, but really it is kind of elevated because they do have that established star in Amari Cooper. Up next is going to be the Steelers. I think George Pickens has a great chance to take another step up and really become a true dominant number one wide receiver. Deontay Johnson is a really solid number two when he can remember how to catch. Allen Robinson, I do think is a decent number three, but he is kind of waning at this point in his career. I don't expect him to be a true threat, but I do like kind of what the Steelers have. I do think they have a nice 1-2-3, and if Pickens can really elevate his play this year, I do think they could absolutely jump the Browns in these rankings. And then for the Ravens, they've got some nice pieces in the wide receiver room now. They haven't had that for a long time, so I am excited to kind of see what they can do. Rashad Bateman hasn't necessarily been able to stay healthy, but when he's out there, he does look like an exciting player. You get Odell Beckham. Obviously, he's coming off multiple ACL injuries. I'm not sure that I really expect him to be a dominant player, but the last time we did see him, he was very, very good in the Super Bowl for the Rams. So potentially he could be a nice piece for them. You draft Zay Flowers as well. So this is a nice core of wide receivers, but I do just think there's a lot of uncertainty with the injuries, as well as just kind of the youth with Bateman and Zay Flowers as well. So don't think you can put them above the other teams in this division right now, but I do like what they have. The tight end position, it's got to be the Ravens at number one. Mark Andrews is a fantastic player, a top three tight end in the league. I think, just behind Kelsey and then maybe Kittle. Just everything that he does in the receiving game is truly, really special. I really like their depth as well. Charlie Kolar is a good player. You also have Isaiah Likely, who had a very nice season as well last year. The Ravens are far and away number one for the tight end position in the AFC North. And number two, I am going to go with the Steelers. I think Pat Freiermuth has really emerged as a very, very good tight end. A top 10 tight end in the league, or very, very close to that at this point. I expect him to take another step up as well. And I do think that they have some really intriguing pieces behind him as well in Darnell Washington, which is maybe what gives them the edge over the Browns. I like David Njoku. I think that they have some decent players, but I do think that Freiermuth is a little bit better, and that's kind of what pushes him above the Browns here. That leaves the Bengals at number four. They really just haven't invested much in this position. Irv Smith, they got from Minnesota in like the sixth wave of free agency. They went bargain bin shopping last year and got Hayden Hurst, and he was very productive. Just seems like they don't really want to invest a lot in that position, so they are going to come in at number four here pretty clearly. Behind Irv Smith, they've got Drew Sample and a bunch of pretty much nobody, so I think that the tight end position is pretty simple and straightforward. For the offensive line, I'm going to go with the Cleveland Browns at number one. I don't think this is very debatable either. The Browns have a fantastic offensive line. You've got Wyatt Teller, Joel Bitonio. You were able to bring back Ethan Pochich, who played center really well for you as well last year. You've also got Conklin and Jedrick Wills. Just a very talented unit on the offensive line, and I think that they're a big reason why Nick Chubb is so productive. They're very good in both the running and passing game, but overall just a great unit there. Next, I am going to go with the Ravens. I think there is a little bit of uncertainty at left guard, whether Ben Cleveland can really kind of take over that role and be very productive, but Morgan Moses played really well for you, signing off the street as a over 30-year-old tackle. That's kind of rare, but him and Ronnie Stanley are a very good duo at that tackle position. I think Tyler Linderbaum is a fantastic young center. Kevin Zeitler continues to play well, even though he is on the wrong side of 30 as well. I think overall the Ravens have a very solid offensive line. Next, I am going to go with the Bengals. I think you could debate the Bengals or the Steelers here, but overall, I like what the Bengals have done to really rebuild this offensive line. Orlando Brown isn't the best against speed rushers, but he is a huge upgrade over what they've had at that tackle position. He's a very good run blocker. He fits their running scheme really well as well. You've got La'el Collins or Jonah Williams, potentially Jackson Carman at right tackle, and the interior of the offensive line when healthy last year was pretty solid as well. Ted Karras, Alex Kappa, both top half of the league starters, I'd say. Cordell Volson has a lot of improvements to be made, but he was a fourth-round rookie last year, so I think that he has some room to grow. Overall, the Bengals do have a pretty solid offensive line at this point. And then the Steelers, I think, do have a really solid offensive line as well. Got some nice free agent signings, signing Mason Cole. You get Ciamalo from the Philadelphia Eagles as well. Both great signings there, and I think that overall you bring Broderick Jones in from Georgia in the draft as well. So I think this is well on its way to being a much improved unit, but it may just take some time to gel. And I do think that, potentially by week 10, this could be a really good unit. It might just take some time to gel and get there. Overall, kind of all the offensive lines in this division, I think, are fairly decent. So you really could make the case for most of them to be a top half of the league unit by maybe midway through this year. Moving to the edge rusher position next, I think you've absolutely got to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers at number 1. TJ Watt, one of the best pass rushers in the league when he is fully healthy. That has been a key these past couple of years, but I do think when he's out there, he is absolutely fantastic. Alex Highsmith really came on well last year as well. I don't think there's any debate. They have to be number 1 here. Maybe one of the best edge duos in the entire NFL. At number 2, I think you could make a debate here, but I am going to go with the Browns simply because of the Myles Garrett factor. I do think he is the best edge rusher in the league. He is just so truly dominant, gets double teams constantly, and his pure power is just so hard for offensive linemen to handle. I just think he is so good. No more Jadeveon Clowney. Not that he was fantastic for them either, but I do think they have some quality players that could potentially step up there. It is all just going to be Myles Garrett really bumping them into this number 2 ranking, though, with how purely dominant he is. At number 3, I'm going to go with the Cincinnati Bengals. Trey Hendrickson has been very underrated, very productive the past couple of years. But I do think that the addition of Myles Murphy, you also have Joseph Ossai, Cam Sample, this is a very deep unit, and I really like what they have all across the board. You have a good number 1 alpha edge rusher in Trey Hendrickson and a lot of quality pieces behind him as well. So the Bengals absolutely, I think, have a very good unit at that edge rusher position, and that leaves the Ravens at number 4. Odafe Oweh, you've got some nice players across that edge rush position. I just don't think they have a dominant number 1 edge rusher like I do think all of the other teams in this division have. So that is why the Ravens are at number 4. At the interior defensive line position, one is also tough. I am going to go with the Bengals here at number 1. I think DJ Reader is the best nose tackle in the NFL. I do think that he is severely underrated and just a fantastic player for them. He completely changes the math in the running game, and he is so good eating up double teams and really being just a dominant run stuffer. You've got BJ Hill as well, who has been a very solid player as a number 2. You've got some other pieces that rotate in as well, and some of their edge rushers do occasionally kick inside on passing downs as well. So I do think that they have a very nice interior defensive line room, and DJ Reader is the main reason behind that. At number 2, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, Cam Hayward has been just a stalwart on that defensive line for a very long time. He continues to be incredibly productive. You have Larry Ogunjobi. You just drafted Keanu Benton as well. Just love what the Steelers have. You could absolutely make the case that they're the number 1 interior defensive line in this division. I just love DJ Reader so much at that nose tackle position, but the Steelers have the depth that you really look for. I think they have a lot of talented players on that defensive line. Up next, it is the Ravens. They did lose Calais Campbell in free agency, though he was getting older. He was still fairly productive. Justin Madueke hasn't been as productive as he's gotten more snaps. Michael Pierce is a decent player. They've got some pieces there, but nothing that really is incredibly impressive. Hopefully Travis Jones takes a nice step for them moving forward. And finally, that leaves the Browns at number 4. You did bring in Dalvin Tomlinson, who is a huge upgrade over what they had. Jordan Elliott's there. You drafted Siaki Ika. I just think there's kind of a lack of depth. Even Tomlinson is a solid player, but he's nothing special. And, I think overall this has been a problem area for the Browns, and it still remains one as well, though it has improved this year over years past. At linebacker up next, I am going to go with the Ravens at number 1, mostly because Roquan Smith has just been such a good player for them. Ultimately, you trade that second round pick for him, but he really has been kind of worth every penny of that deal and that trade. Really just a fantastic player. Patrick Queen has played a lot better next to him as well. I do think that Queen is a little bit reliant on being that second linebacker, just somebody that can really run and chase and, not necessarily have to think too much with Roquan kind of taking over command of the middle of that defense. Patrick Queen can just kind of use his athleticism and speed to be a really good heat-seeking missile. For the Bengals, up next, I think Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson are one of the best young linebacker duos in the NFL. They did re-sign Jermaine Pratt, which was a bit of a surprise, but I really think that he turned on last year and was incredibly productive. Logan Wilson is very good creating turnovers, and I think both of them are top 20 linebackers in the NFL, so they absolutely deserve that second spot. At number 3, I am going to go with the Browns. I like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. They've dealt with a lot of injuries at that position. You've got Walker as well. I think there's some decent pieces that you could potentially be excited about for the Browns, but I do think they are a clear tier below the first two in the Ravens and the Bengals. And then finally, the Steelers. They have pretty much completely given up on this position. Cole Holcomb, you bring in a couple of other guys. You lose Devin Bush. You cut Miles Jack. They just don't have much proven at all at the linebacker position, and I just don't expect this to be a strength of the team by any stretch of the imagination. I just think they are very clearly number 4 at that linebacker position. They just don't seem to value it super highly. At the cornerback position, it's got to be the Browns at number 1. Denzel Ward is a lockdown number 1 corner. Greg Newsome has been a fantastic number 2. Martin Emerson really played well as a rookie last year. He's somebody that can be physical and really kind of match up against T. Higgins, Mike Evans, some of the big physical ball winners in the NFL, and that is an incredibly important player that they have there in Emerson. I think the Browns are very clearly number 1. They have a 1-2-3 that is really, really good. They also drafted Mitchell this draft as well out of Northwestern, and I really liked him. I just think that overall the Browns have a great corner core there. At number 2, I am going to go with the Bengals. Chidobe Awuzie coming back from a ACL injury, but before that, he was a really solid number 1 corner. He was a fringe top 10 corner. And then behind that, they've got Cam Taylor-Britt, they've got DJ Turner, they've got Mike Hilton, that slot corner, who's one of the better slot corners in the league. I just think they have a lot of depth. They have some nice young pieces as well. No more Eli Apple, so that is something that I do think some fans will be very happy about. Overall, though, I do think that the Bengals have a very deep and talented cornerback room. At number 3, I am going to go with the Ravens. You've got Marlon Humphrey, who is a top 10 corner in the league. Absolutely, he is one of the best to do it there. Marcus Peters did leave in free agency. He still is somebody that has not found a home as well, but I do think the Ravens have some pieces to potentially replace him. You've got Jalen Armour-Davis. You've got some other guys there as well, but I do think they don't necessarily have the stability at that corner 2 position to put them above number 3 here. And then for the Steelers, you sign Patrick Peterson, you get some interesting players, but I think overall, you lose Cameron Sutton in free agency, you lost Mike Hilton a few years ago as well. There's just a lot of turnover in the back end of the Steelers cornerback room. You get Joey Porter Jr. For them, hopefully he turns into a very good player, but there is just a lot of uncertainty in that Steelers corner room due to the age of Patrick Peterson and some of the youth behind him. So I think overall, they are very clearly the number 4 cornerback room in the AFC North. At safety, the Ravens are going to be number 1. You've got Kyle Hamilton, who played really, really well. You've got Marcus Williams and some other nice pieces. I think they are very clearly the number 1 safety team in the AFC North here. At number 2, going to go with the Steelers. Minkah Fitzpatrick, one of the best safeties in the NFL, really had some very, very good numbers last year, and I think he absolutely kind of pushes this unit to that number 2 spot. You also got Braden Casey, and you have some nice, interesting pieces after losing Edmonds as well. So I do think the Steelers are in that number 2 spot. For the Browns, you bring in Juan Thornhill, replacing John Johnson. You've got some other interesting pieces. Grant Delpit's still there, and I think overall they have a very solid safety room. And then the Bengals, there's just a lot of uncertainty after losing both their starters. I do believe that Dax Hill is going to be a very solid player, their first-round pick from last year, but he will be replacing Jesse Bates. You bring in Nick Scott and Jordan Battle to potentially fight it out to replace Von Bell. There's just a lot of uncertainty there. This could go up, but I think overall the Bengals are going to be 4th in that safety room. Let me know what you think down below. If you like this kind of video, leave a comment down below what division you'd like to see next. While you're down there, hit that like and subscribe button as well. It helps grow the channel, and I would truly appreciate your support. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day.